Hey y'all, it's Nancy, the Handy Scandy. Thanks for joining me today. As you can see, we're going to be making this Slimline Halloween shaker card. I am calling it Jeepers Creepers Halloween Peepers, based on the name of this particular stamp set on the screen. Now, that was the stamp set that got my juices flowing, but then I started to see all these components that were in my stash, and this card even led to a bonus card, and that video will be up shortly. I originally shared this video over on Whimsy, but really wanted to share it with you guys here today because I know not everybody goes over to the Whimsy channel, but I would encourage you to do so. I'll have it linked downstairs if you want to just jump over there. But in the meantime, I've got this super creepy, bulgy-eyed skeleton man. He was the final component that I needed for this card, and let's just jump on in. So what I'm going to do is a little bit of partial embossing. I've used some anti-static powder on the piece of pattern paper, and I've actually sprayed the backside with some water as well because I'm going to do the embossing folder. And you always want to mist your paper just a little bit, whether it's with water or alcohol, just to loosen the fibers a little bit of the cardstock or the pattern paper that you're going to use and run through your embossing folder, because essentially you're breaking the fibers of the paper, and the moisture helps to kind of soften that a little bit so it doesn't actually tear and break. Now, I used Versamark on the folder in the beginning because I'm going to do some heat embossing. You really don't need the heat embossing if you don't want it. I mean, that embossing folder is stunning, and the way it did that partial embossing, I think it worked just perfectly. But I never can leave well enough alone, so I did decide to go ahead and use my embossing powder. Now, this is an old one from my stash. It's called White Satin Pearl, and it just leaves this kind of glistening effect, if you will, like a spider web glistening in the moonlight or the sunlight or whatever. And you saw me knocking it off with that paintbrush there up at the top right corner, just because it stuck in places I didn't want it to stick. And I think that's because I used the water, because you know you have to mist your paper just so that it doesn't crackle too much, which, by the way, the crackle is what made that embossing folder work on that particular card. So, side note. But again, you would not have to use the embossing powder if you didn't want to. So here I have the smallest, I believe it's the smallest of the milk jugs from the milk can die set that came out earlier this year. And I'm cutting 3 different jugs. This is essentially going to be the front of my shaker card. And now these 3 jugs, guys, if you do this, hang on to them. In fact, these ultimately become vases for a bonus card that I will have linked downstairs. It should be up momentarily after this one goes live on September 5th, 2022. And in the meantime, we're going to go ahead and get on with this card. So I'm starting to assemble. I'm adding a super strong adhesive to the back, and then I will lay down some Duralar to be my shaker window, and then I use that super strong and sticky black foam tape that is from Whimsy. It is super strong, I can tell you, and this essentially becomes my shaker. And then these eyeballs that actually kind of take center stage between them and the skull, or the skeleton man, I mean, they're amazing. Those are from the Jeepers Creepers set. I stamped them out twice, heat embossed, and then I colored them very simply with super light green and a yellowy green, just to kind of match the skeleton man's eyes. So I adhered them down. I fussy cut them out, kind of overlapped them so that they made just one big image across the back of this little panel, and that of course becomes the back of my shaker, and essentially it's the contents of the jugs. And so we've got the background, we've got the shaken eyeballs, we have the confetti from This Calls for Confetti, which, by the way, the different colors were lime zest and fresh lemonade, and they're just that really soft greeny yellowy color that matches eyes. Matches eyes really well, in fact, and I think it's so much fun the way they shake around in there and the eyeballs kind of roll up and down. It's creepy, but it's also fun at the same time. So I added the whole panel to my card base, which measures, it's about 8.5 by 3 3/4. I wanted there to be a little bit of a white border on the top and the bottom, and we were able to make that happen. And then I kind of went back and forth on the sentiment. I won't lie, it was not an easy decision. I knew that I wanted to use the words Jeepers Creepers, but I had them stamped out on other paper, and I cut them out with sentiment dies, and I just wasn't happy with them. So ultimately, I just cut them off of the stamp so that I could access them individually. And before you gasp, there was a day when all stamps came on red rubber like this, and you had to fussy cut them out in order to use them. So that doesn't bother me one bit. That's just kind of what we used to do, and was kind of second nature, to be honest. But I really like the way when I was able to isolate them from the rest of the stamp, how they just fit down in this darker corner. I don't think I could have done it up at the top because of his eyeball. I didn't obviously want to stamp any words over his eyeball, but I love that font. And then I used that same white satin pearl embossing powder, so it's just really subtle. Has a little bit of a shine, and it doesn't take away from the rest of the card, and it just is kind of Jeepers Creepers. So guys, that is my final card. Oh my gosh, I had so much fun making this one for you today. And as I mentioned, I will have the video for the bonus card up shortly here on my channel. Again, September 5th, 2022. And guys, these are just the close-ups of this card. It's so much fun. You can see all the details. You can see the creepy eyes. Let me know your thoughts. I'd love to chat with you downstairs in the comments. If you like this video, go ahead and give it a thumbs up. If you are not already a member of my Crafty tribe, I'd love it if you'd consider subscribing. And until next time, guys, this has been Nancy, the Handy Scandy. Thanks for joining me for another Halloween card. And until the next time, mwah, I'm out.